This week on the Donut Box podcast, hear about how I rode in the back of Micah's pickup truck in the freezing cold to help save him from a girl that was trying to make the moves on Micah.
Then we're going to go into wild plain stowaway stories that got people arrested on the jail report. After that, we're going to quiz Chris on his general knowledge. We're going to see just how well his fine arts magnet school high school education is getting him this far in life at age 30.
We'll see, and hear about how I am frustrated at movies nowadays. What's wrong with movies nowadays? Find out on What Fries My Donuts.
And guess what? We've got improv and more. So you know what? I think we got nothing to do besides run this intro. What you think, Christopher?
Let's take it away.
Hi, I'm Micah,
And I'm Chris.
and we've been friends for over 20 years.
Surprisingly, we haven't killed each other yet. Years ago, we started our own variety show, and it sucked.
Now that we're adults, we decided to give it another try. Like in the movie, life is like a box of donuts. You never know which one's gonna be the next one.
Wait a second, it's chocolates.
Oh, right. Okay, well, let's start the show.
This is the Donut Box Podcast. Well, welcome back to the Donut Box Podcast. If you are a brand new listener, welcome. If you're a returning OG, welcome back as well. Hey, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you're listening on, go check us out on YouTube because you can actually see our faces. So go check us out.
Absolutely.
Donut Box, that's donuts with GH. I'm going to plug it at the beginning on YouTube. And so you just type in Donut Box Podcast and you'll see our faces, and we're finally on camera. So how you doing this week, buddy?
Man, it's great. It's interesting going through that first episode where we were on camera. I'll say this: it was like interesting having to go through that little bit of extra layer of things. I think some lessons learned, some good things, and we're going to continue to improve upon it. But dude, this show is about to be really, really, really fantastic in my personal opinion. I think we have some really, really good content. But man, I'm super stoked for our first segment, and that's our old fashioned donut, which is always a story from our past. And Chris, what do we have today, man?
So we told this story on, I think it was episode 6, or maybe it was episode 8, but we called it, I think, The Truck. And basically, this was, you guys have heard many of times about how we grew up in church, grew up going to youth group, all that good stuff. Well, if you also heard, Micah used to drive this old Isuzu pickup truck. It was a shift stick truck. It was not that great of a truck. Not that great of a
No,
truck.
no, it wasn't. And just a little backstory on that. It was my first ever vehicle. And it was a little bit of a source of pride because I'll say this, it was a $600 truck. No, 600 or 650. Wow, that used to be like oh yeah, I used to remember that number. I don't remember the number. It was 600 or $650, something like that, right? And bought it from this lady. And man, it was like Chris said, it was a manual, it was a stick shift. Man, it was not a very good truck. Like that thing was incredibly slow. It would stall out like crazy. It didn't matter. A lot of the times people would be like, oh, well, you just don't know how to drive a manual. It's like, no, you could press the clutch. You could do everything you need to do. Like I had, because of course I was 16 at the time when I had this truck. It was my first vehicle. And so like when adults would get in it, they would be like, oh, yeah, it really is kind of messed up. It's like, yeah, yeah, it is. And like what I mean by that is, so where we lived at in Georgia, I know I'm going kind of on a rabbit trail about this truck, but um, where we lived at in Georgia was really hilly. And Chris, I'm sure you remember riding with me, man, when it would be like you would always be going downhill or you would go uphill and it would die on you, right? Like it would die on you. And anybody that's driven a manual, you can do something that's called popping the clutch, which basically you put it into a certain gear and you literally release the clutch and it'll start the engine back up for you. And so a lot of times that was kind of the trick of the trade while driving because it died so much was trying to keep it at speed enough to be able to pop the clutch and get it back started while driving. So you're not at a red light trying to crank it. It was a whole thing. But anyways, yeah, the Isuzu pickup truck, the 650 Isuzu pickup truck.
Yeah, so now that we have the backstory set up, all that good stuff, Mike and I have also talked about how like we weren't really like we thought we were ladies men, but like we were just typical teenagers trying to shoot our shot with everyone.
Oh yeah.
And if girls were into me, I had no clue at the time because I was just like, "Woo!" I had no idea.
Yeah.
But there was this one girl, and Micah knew she was into him, and I don't even know how this came about, but she really, really, really liked you. Like,
I could
really
tell you how
liked
it
you.
came about. I can tell you how it came about. So it was because, and this is dumb, and Chris is about to laugh really hard. We used to play basketball in the church gym with her brother, and she would like sit there and watch us. And apparently, like she told me, like she got my number, and then after that, she started like flirting with me. And then after that, I remember one of the texts was like, "You so hot when you play basketball or something," and I was just like, "Oh, that's it's like, oh, that's what I knew." Which, by the
Uh,
way, why he's laughing is because we were terrible at basketball. Like, I mean, we were terrible at
What
basketball.
was funny was that we were just two white boys, and not that it matters, but like she was African American, so she was like, she sees some people play some basketball, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that little white boy, he cute when he play."
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and plus her brother was younger than us and everything. And sometimes we'd play on a team of three, and like her brother and somebody else would play on a team of two, and they would still beat us.
Oh yeah,
So
they would beat us
it
bad.
was it was like it was not very good. But anyway, so she started talking. That's when it really started. Was she said, "Oh yeah, because of basketball." That's how it
So
kind of
did
struck
you?
off.
What did you say when she said that? Did you just kind of like entertain it because you liked the attention at
Oh
the
no,
time,
I let her
or
on. I
or
let
you
her
just
on
like,
straight up. I let her on straight up. Like, I hate to say that this was me at that point, right? Again, like Chris said, I was very naive to the fact of anything going on. So any lady that gave me attention, especially because we were like, I wouldn't say sheltered, but it was different in the environment that we came up in. So like socially, I was a little different than most people. So like maybe I was good looking, but like the way I acted kept the ladies at bay, if that makes sense. That kept
yeah,
them
you were kind
from,
of a spaz.
yeah, I was definitely a spaz. I needed to calm down a lot. And so had a lot of that going on. So anytime a lady was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm into you," even beyond that, it's like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna entertain it, even if I don't think that you attractive or I'm into you at all. Like I'll still." And so I'll be real. That's what ended up happening. So like, yeah, I did entertain it and whatnot, and we did talk for a little bit and whatnot.
So
Talk,
we
yeah,
were at youth this one particular time, and she really, I don't know what happened, but I think she intentionally did this. She parked her car at the Wendy's, which was just not even a quarter mile down the road. Like it was quarter mile down the road, takes 2 minutes, right? And it was the end of youth group. We're all hanging out, and she asked Micah to like, "Hey, can you take me to my car?" And just to give you a little backstory, and we've talked about this, like it was really enforced, like, hey, don't be alone with a girl. Even if you're not going to do anything, she could accuse you and say that you did
yeah,
something. And there was that happened to a guy in our church, and he got kicked out of the church because he
yeah.
allegedly did something with the pastor's granddaughter.
Don't know the full situation on that one at all, but all I know is it really ruined that guy's life. Like, I mean, it really was a bad deal. It wasn't just he got kicked out of church. Like, I mean, it was years later. He was like at work, and like people were with like somebody had come in who knew about the situation, like told his boss at the time. Where that's what we were told as guys. It's like don't be in a room alone with the girl, and it was more than just like, oh, you might be able to get people pregnant and stuff like that. No, it was like, listen, you could be like going to jail. Like that was the whole talk was like, it's not just that, like you could go to jail and be on like the offender registry and like have to register. Like, I mean, they were like really hardcore about like, do not be alone with people. And so it was really, really imperative. And like how it started was how this church was. It was kind of up this hill, and there was kind of a gap in this fence, and you can go through there, but it was all like wooded and stuff. And at first, she wanted to walk up and like through there
She
into the
wanted to
wooded area.
walk with you? You never told me
Yeah,
this part of the story. I thought she just wanted you to drive her to her car. I didn't know she
no,
wanted to walk through the woods with you.
it was,
Boy, she
yeah.
was trying
And
to get you to do. Mm-mm.
that's what I'm saying. So what ended up happening at that point was I was like, nah, because it was cold. It was cold outside. And I was like, nah, I'm not gonna walk up there. Like I if we gonna do it, we're gonna drive. And like I was already kind of privy to us. Obviously, she's like, let's go up and walk this way. And of course, I know people are like, I don't know this place, but I'll tell you this much. A, it was dark. B, it's like this wooded area is fairly wooded and it's right next to the interstate. and like there was like a homeless dude camped out back there for like the longest time, and like
There
I
was
mean
some
it's
wooded stuff. Like it could have been easy, and we both kind of picked up on her intentions. In the words of the famous Dusty Rhodes, she was a Jezebel. She was a
yeah,
that old Jezebel was trying to get Micah.
yeah, you know how it is.
But
And
yeah, so she did that, and then what did you say to her after you were like, okay, I'm not gonna walk? You were like, did you offer to drive her?
I was, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to walk with you, but I'll drive with you. And, but the intention was already like, I got to go talk to my boy Chris. And it's like, it ain't going to be oh, I'm going to drive you and it's just going to be you and me. It's going to be like, oh, I need to drop Chris off after this, or like he needs to come with me, or like something like that. And like, we'll make it some sort of,
Well, in the truck was a single cab, so there wasn't any back seats. So there was like bench seats, and then so you could fit three, but with the stick shift, like there was
you
no
don't
way.
want to. And listen, I'll be, yeah, there's no way. And I'll be real with you. That's my, you know, my best friend right there and everything like that. That gear shift is gone where I'm not trying to get close to it all. So it's one of those things of like, I ain't having him sit right there at all. So it's like one of those things. It's like, I'm sorry, bro, you're gonna have to sit in the back.
Well, no,
And
you came up
so
to me and you were like, "Okay, I'm gonna take," and I will use her name because her name's not that famous, but if that's okay. Hey, I'm gonna take Charity to her car. It's just right down the street, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And then you were like, "I'm going to take Charity to her car." You kind of gave me like I
yeah,
don't know
that
what
look.
you like. You didn't say anything, but I was like, "Oh, like he
I
wants me to
remember
go with him."
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember you were sitting on the couch like talking. There was like a couch in our youth group, and like he was sitting on there like talking to some folks, and I was like, I'm taking her to her car at the Popeyes, or not, the Wendy's. And you were just like, oh, like I think the first time you were like, okay, yeah, I don't know what you said, but you kind of like be safe or something. I was just like, no, bro, like, I'm taking her. And so you hopped to,
I
and I
was like,
remember
"Oh."
and I remember, so we started going out to the parking lot, and that's when I kind of we were like discussing. He's like, "Where am I going to sit?" And it's like, "You're gonna have to sit in the bed, I guess, my man." And I was like, "The best that I can do is it had like a little slidey glass window in the back, and like for a crappy truck as it was, the heat works because obviously, like the heat just comes from the motor, right? So of course the heat works well. So I had that heat on full blast, and I had it shooting back to him through this little gap in the window.
It was only like a 2 minute drive, but I was sitting there like, oh man,
It
because
was
it was
cold.
cold. I was
It
like,
was
oh
really
my
cold.
gosh. I was like,
Like,
it's so cold. But I was like, I'm doing this for my boy. Like, I gotta do it to make sure he doesn't get taken advantage of by this Jezebel. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. And
And she was upset that I
she
went
was
along.
mad. She was so mad. We got in the truck, and like before I opened the sliding glass window, she was like, "Why is he here?" And I was like, "Oh, he's my friend." And like I'm gonna go like get some food with him after. I don't remember what I said, but I said something along those lines of like, "Hey, he's my friend. Like we're gonna go do something afterwards." And I don't remember what she said, but it was like an insinuation of like I thought it was just gonna be us, and it was like, nah, like it's all good, like we just hanging out. And like she was really really mad. And further to know that it was a trap, you remember her car was parked when we got to the Wendy's.
No, I don't remember
It was
where
in
it
the
was parked.
back. It was in the
Oh, she
back.
parked her car in the
She
back.
parked her car in the back,
Oh.
and right in the back of Wendy's was like the tree area where you would like walk through. Remember? So like that was the whole thing, and that's the reason she wanted to walk back, because like her and her brother had like walked to church through there, which was a really weird way to do it. It was a setup,
But
bro.
hold
Like
on,
there's no way.
why didn't her brother why didn't she be like, "Hey, could you take me and my brother?" Or where her brother was nowhere to be seen. I guess she was gonna come back for her brother. I
That's what
don't know
she
what.
was gonna do. She was gonna get the car. She was gonna drive back around and get her
Oh,
brother.
she
So
was
that's what I'm
going to
saying. It
get the
was a.
car
She
to
was
go
going to
get
get the
her
car.
brother. But she
It was a trap. As Admiral
yeah,
Akbar would say, it's a trap.
yeah,
you know. So
that's
yeah,
crazy.
but
I remember
see, I think you.
I hopped back in
Yeah, I
that
think you
truck
would do
real
that,
quick.
boy.
Real quick. I was like, did y'all talk? I don't even remember. Did y'all talk long once you dropped her off, or did you just drop her off and then
No, I was just like, yeah, have a nice night.
did
you
she
know
ever
me at
say
the
anything
time.
to you else after that? Like, or
Nah, in
mention it
fact,
or talk to you or anything?
no, that was kind of the end of things actually, because after that, she really didn't. She really didn't. Like, I think we made it. or at least I made it clear enough, I guess, in the actions that it took to be like, I'm not really about that, and I'm not really gonna do that. So
Yeah. I helped my boy out because she was probably trying to get him to do some stuff that he didn't want to do. That was a great story, but we're gonna move on to our next segment, which is the Jelly Donut, and that's our jail report.
hey, Chris, we've got a great jail report today, and our jail report is about plain stowaways that have been arrested. A few of them not quite arrested.
So how do you stow away on a plane?
Well, typically it's got to be a pretty big plane first and foremost because there's not a lot of spaces on smaller planes in the landing gear compartment. Typically, it's in the landing gear compartment if you
Okay.
can get on there. Now, some of these stories I'm about to tell you are a little different, but a lot of them people will sneak on and then get up into the landing gear somehow. So, of course, it's got to be a pretty big plane for a full person to get up in there because some of these smaller ones, that landing gear is really heavy and it's a big mechanism. It'll just crush you pretty much if you try
Yeah.
to get to a small one. So, all right, man, you ready to go into some of these?
Let's see what's up.
All right. So the first stowaway that we have, this was a guy in Indonesia, 21-year-old guy. He sneaked on to an Indonesian plane in Sumatra, hidden its landing gear, and he was only on a 1 hour flight. Now that doesn't sound like much, but that's still freezing temperatures for over an hour. And
Oh
a
yeah.
lack of oxygen because it was 32,000 feet. So it's a lack of oxygen and freezing temperatures. So they were shocked when they found him alive because part of what the problem is, and I'll kind of go into this and what you'll see in some of these stories is there's a lot that goes on, right? It's not just takeoff. Takeoff is really a violent thing. And so you're already having to hold on a lot. Then you have to survive the landing gear coming up and coming into the compartment and not, crushing you. And then after that, you have to endure the cold, make sure you don't freeze to death. And then the lack of oxygen, most people pass out. And so what ends up happening is when they start coming down and the landing gear comes down, they're passed out or frozen or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's whatever. So there's like a lot you have to endure. And then even if you survive all that somehow, then you have to survive the landing and how bumpy that is and not fall out because you're still landing at like 200 miles an hour. So you're not trying to fall out and because you'll have problems. So there's a lot to surviving one of these things. But they were shocked to find him alive. And basically, the only reason when they asked him why he did this, he claimed that he wanted to visit the capital city of Jakarta, which is where they found him. But he was inspired by other stowaway stories. He wanted to see the city, but couldn't afford a ticket. So he was charged with illegal transit, which the max sentence in the country is 5 years. But they let him go after initial detainment. They were just like,
Would
whatever.
you stow away or no?
Oh, heck no, man. That sounds like a terrible experience. That sounds awful. Now,
But that is something you can like tell people. Yeah, I stowed away on an airplane one time.
yeah, that's pretty crazy. Now, for an hour, I could see it being done, but like luckily in some of these in like East Asia, there's really big planes that go really short distances. But like here in the States, that's not a thing. Typically, if you're on a big plane, you're going a long way, which is some of these other stories as well. Like this very next one. The next one, you might have heard about this one. This was a 15-year-old boy from California who survived a 5.5 hour flight from San Jose, California to Maui while he was hiding in the wheel well of a Hawaiian Airlines Boeing 767. So a big plane. So pretty much he just ran away from home, scaled the airport fence, and got access to the aircraft. So he somehow survived and the sub-zero temperatures, the lack of oxygen, all that stuff. And basically, when they found him, he was in Maui and he was dazed and confused, wandering the tarmac. So it was like this boy's just out there wandering the tarmac. And so when they started asking them questions, the teen told them, apparently he passed out for a good amount of the flight and he came to once coming back in. And somehow, despite the freezing temperatures and lack of oxygen, he made it alive. Came in. Now he was charged and detained, but they did release him because he was 15. So
Do you think that 15 or 16-year-old Micah would have stowed away on an airplane or still no?
probably no, just because knowing like the chances of survival, a lot of these are like miraculous stories. Like
Yeah.
most of these stories, I had to really dig to find some, and there's still even some where the people did not make it, but it's ones that's like most of the people just don't make it. It's not a very high chance of getting it right. In fact, like the next two. And the reason I put the next two in here is because after the first two, you might say, hey, maybe I'll stow away to my next flight to Vegas. And let's not do that. Okay. So these two are both from Africa. One's from Ghana. And it was on a British Airways flight in 2000. It was actually two teenage boys, and they were stowed away on a British Airlines flight from Accra, Ghana, over to London Heathrow, and it took about 7 hours. So think about this: they were there for 7 hours, and they hit the wheel well. Only one of them survived, though. The other
So
one,
one of them was a Ghana.
I don't know how to respond to you right now. Wow,
Sorry, that's inappropriate.
that was great of you, but terrible of you at the same time. So I'm not even going to go there. Um, So one of them survived, one of them did not. The one that did survive was found unconscious upon arrival, like somehow was able to hold on and was, but just unconscious, but was in severe hyperthermia and frostbite and was in ICU for quite a bit of time, almost didn't make it, but his partner did not make it. And so it's one of those things. If you feel like you think you want to do that, that's probably what's going to happen to you. And then this next one is the typical manner of what ends up happening. In 2019, a stowaway hid in the landing gear of a compartment of a Kenya Airways flight, and it was from Nairobi to London. He managed to survive the flight, enduring temperatures and whatnot. However, as the plane approached Heathrow, they're not sure what happened, but he ended up falling from the plane and ended up landing in somebody's backyard garden. So there was that. And so after further investigation, it was revealed that he was actually a stowaway and he was able to get on because he was a cleaner at the airport in which the plane left. And so he was able to sneak onto the tarmac and get onto the plane. So
Wow. Then all of that, like just thinking about like being in the back of that pickup truck and then being in sub-zero temp, like that doesn't even sound worth it to me. Like that just sounds like a miserable time.
yeah,
But I mean, if you're like, if you
if you're
are,
desperate, I
if
mean,
you're
I understand
desperate,
if you're
yeah,
desperate. And, I did leave off a lot of other stories because, some of these stowaway stories are really sad because they're just trying to get away from certain situations and things like that. And so it makes it really sad. A lot of these, though, that I looked up are like, oh, I just didn't have a ticket.
yeah. Because
It
I was
didn't,
gonna say like it's one thing if you're trying to leave your like leave the country because something's bad is happening or you're trying to be a refugee or whatever it is, but at the same time,
right.
it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little different. But this last one that I'm going to tell you about, it's probably my favorite one of all. And this just happened just a few days ago, the 26th of November, actually. There was a lady who snuck on a plane at JFK Airport in New York and almost made it to Paris unnoticed with no ticket, no nothing. So this lady didn't have a boarding pass, somehow went through TSA security screening at JFK, bypassed two identity verification stations, and a boarding status station. So, like boarding the plane when you have to scan the ticket, somehow made it past that and got onto the plane. So the passengers and the crew were not alerted to stowaway until almost towards the end of the flight to Paris. And granted, this is a 7.5 to 8 hour flight. So almost to the end of this flight is finally when they kind of hopped to that maybe this lady was a stowaway. She actually was going back and forth from bathroom to bathroom. And so that's what she had done the entire flight was she had just kind of posted up in the back bathroom and then she would kind of go over to the business class bathroom. But after a while, they started noticing, okay, this lady is bouncing back and forth. And so once they started questioning her, then they found out she didn't have a ticket. But at that time, she thought, hey, I'm almost to Paris. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like I pretty much accomplished with it. Not the case. The US said, you're getting your behind back. There was actually a whole debate this past week between Delta because the flight was on Delta. So she already got one free flight to Paris. The US government's like, well, you got to fly her back for free. And Delta's like, heck no, we're not flying her back for free. Like, especially because now they got to give her a seat. They're not just going to let her sit in the bathroom this time. So they're like, no, we're not going to let her get back in here for free. And so finally, Delta flew her back. Come to find out, they take her to court, and this was yesterday, Thursday. They get her into court, And come to find out, when they were trying to get her bail, she had tried to do this at Miami airport a few months ago by arriving on a flight and then immediately going to departures and trying to sneak onto a flight without a boarding pass. Now, luckily they caught her, but this was not the first time that she tried to do this. But what's wild to me about this story, Chris, and I got to hear your opinion on this, how in the heck do you sneak past JFK, not just TSA, two identity screening stations, and the little gate like put the boarding thing on? Like, what they were saying, and a lot of the spokespeople are saying, is, it was the Thanksgiving time of year, and so like there was a lot of travel and there's a lot of room for confusion. But this is a really huge thing. I mean, she almost all the way got to Paris unnoticed.
Yeah, I don't know how she did that. Again, probably a lot of distraction. I could see like if the ladies like doing this and that, like getting on the boarding, whatever. Like if everyone's kind of just trying to get people through, I can definitely see maybe how she got through. But that's wild. Is she gonna get? Are they gonna? You think gonna get money out of her or anything?
Yes. So that's the other part to this. The U.S. government is starting a civil suit. Delta's also starting a civil suit against her, but she's also getting charged with what was the charge? Sorry, I wrote down the charge here. She's being charged with being a stowaway on a vessel or aircraft without consent, which also carries a 20-year sentence in prison potentially. So just depending on how far they want to go. But I think a lot of it, from what I've read, is going to be monetary. They're just going to sue her a lot and make sure she doesn't do it money wise.
But what if she doesn't have any money? What is she gonna do? They're not gonna get any money. Obviously, she couldn't afford a plane ticket, so there ain't no way they're gonna get money out of her. So what's the?
Yeah, I don't know. That's something you have to ask. I don't know who comes after you on that. I wanted to say the IRS, but that's for if you don't do your taxes. Like they got to send somebody out after you, I guess. But yeah. Anyways, it's pretty interesting ordeal. So that's still ongoing. But I figured that one was the great one to end it off there.
Did you like my Ghana joke?
I did. Was a little insensitive, a tad, but that's okay.
But you set me up. You shouldn't have told me that where they were
shouldn't
from.
have set you up.
As soon as you said, "Oh, they stowed away and they were from Ghana and one of them died," oh man, set me up.
I can't help it, man.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for my insensitivity.
It's okay, man. You know what? This just shows how much of friends we are. Sometimes we just alley-oop each other and we're not even trying. We're not even trying. So, all right, man, you ready to move to this next segment?
Let's do it.
I don't know if you are ready, man. It's testing your general knowledge here in the donut hole segment. I'm telling you, this is just kind of a random array of questions that we have, and typically things that you would have learned in school, or kind of general tidbits of knowledge. You'll see what I'm talking about.
See how much I remember.
Yeah, let's see what happens. So your first question, you ready for your first question? Your first question. What is the only mammal in this list that is capable of true flight? So true flight by definition here. Is it A, a bat, B, a flying squirrel, C, a pigeon, or D, a penguin?
I would assume it's a flying squirrel.
It's actually a bat. So flying squirrel.
Bats are mammals?
Bats are mammals.
Huh. Okay. Penguins can't fly.
Penguins cannot fly, no. So the only one that could technically only have true flight is a bat, because apparently squirrels, they only glide.
Okay. All right. Well then. Okay.
All right. So 0 for 1, but that's okay. I feel like you're gonna get this more here. All right. 2. What is the smallest planet in our solar system? Is it A, Mercury, B, Venus, C, Mars, or D, Pluto?
I feel like this is a trick question because Pluto isn't a planet anymore, but my answer would be Pluto.
It is Pluto if you count it as a planet. Now, I don't know, mainly because it's always been debated. Just let the dang planet in, it's fine. And so if it was not, though, it'd have been Mercury. But if you count it, it's Pluto. So you got that one right. All right, which country is known as the land of the rising sun? Is it A, China, B, Japan, C, Thailand, or D, South Korea?
Ooh, oh, land of the rising sun. I want to go with Japan or South Korea.
What's your final answer?
We're gonna go South Korea.
Ah, man, you should have went with Japan. It was Japan. It was Japan. Land of the Rising Sun. Yeah. That's why they always had like the bandana with like the red
The
with
sun
the,
on
like,
it.
sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What is the longest river in the world? Is it A, the Amazon, B, the Nile, C, the Yangtze, or D, the Mississippi?
It's not the Mississippi. It's the Amazon.
It's actually the Nile. The Nile's the longest one.
What?
Yeah. All right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's official. I'm Stooped.
No, it's okay. It's been a long time since high school. What has it been? Your 20th year reunion now? No, I'm joking.
Stop.
I'm
Don't make me roast you.
I'm joking. All right, so next question. And I don't expect you to know this one. This one's just kind of more of an interesting fact question. What is the first product scanned with a barcode? Maybe I should expect you to know this, former grocery boy. All right. What was the first item scanned with a barcode? Was it A, a pack of gum, B, a bottle of Coca-Cola, C, a loaf of bread, or D, a can of soup?
You said pack of gum.
Pack of gum, bottle of Coca-Cola, a loaf of bread, or a can of soup?
I feel like they would make it easy, so I'm gonna go with the can of soup.
No, it's actually the pack of gum.
That was the one that I was. Oh my! I just need to trust my gut
You
because
gotta
that was
trust
what I
your
was
gut,
gonna
man.
say.
You gotta trust your gut. You know these things. I know you know these things. Okay. All right. This one, anatomy. Which organ is in the human body produces insulin? Is it A, the liver, B, the pancreas, C, the kidney, or D, the stomach?
It's your liver, right? No, pancreas. Pancreas.
It's your
Sorry.
pancreas. Yeah, it's your pancreas. I was like, you almost did get it, but no, it's the pancreas. It's the pancreas. So okay, got the pancreas. Next, which is the only continent that does not have native snakes? So what is the only continent in the world that does not have native snakes on there? Is it A, Antarctica, B, Europe, C, North America, or D, Australia?
It's gonna be Antarctica. I feel like it's too cold for snakes to be out in that mug.
Yeah, you're right. There ain't no snakes in Antarctica. There's not a whole lot of anything on Antarctica. Alrighty. Number 8. What is the chemical symbol for gold? So like on the periodic table of elements.
Oh, gold. Okay.
Is it A, AU? Is it B, AG? C, GD? D, GO?
It's gonna be AU.
It is AU. You're correct. Yep, AU. See, you're
AG is silver, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. This one's also a little bit of an interesting one. Nature. How many hearts does an octopus have? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4?
It's actually 3, I think.
It is 3. There is 3
I didn't
hearts
know
in
they
an
had
octopus.
more than one heart. That's interesting that they have 3 hearts.
Yeah, it is.
But then I gotta pump all that, blood to all them tentacles. So
not to be all nerdy and whatnot, but I did watch a documentary about octopus. They're like incredibly intelligent. They be using tools and all sorts. It's crazy. All right, so
I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go where my mind was going. Okay.
Come on,
right.
I set you
Next
up.
one.
What's
No,
wrong
no,
with
no.
you?
Next one.
All right, next one. What is the most spoken language in the world by number of native speakers? So
Okay.
what's the most widely spoken? Is it English, Spanish, Mandarin Chinese, or Hindi?
I want to say Spanish.
It is actually Mandarin Chinese.
What? Oh, I
Yep,
guess
that is
because
the
all
most
the
spoken.
Yeah, they have
That is the most spoken.
big population.
Yeah. All right. We just got a few more here. Which animal has fingerprints that is so similar to humans that they can confuse crime scene investigators? Have you ever heard about that one?
Yes.
Is it A, gorillas, B, koalas, C, chimpanzees, or D, orangutans?
I knew it was going to be some kind of monkey, but it's either a gorilla or a chimpanzee, but I'm going to go with a chimp.
You would think so. It is actually a koala. Apparently koalas.
Really?
Yeah, if you look it up, they get confused. Crime scene investigators with koalas.
Interesting.
Isn't that
Yeah.
wild? Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
I found that out the other day too. All right. Which country invented ice cream? So like technically invented ice cream. We won't
Yep.
go into it. A, Italy, B, China, C, France, or D, the United States.
Is it Italy?
It was actually China.
China invented ice cream? I
That's
didn't
what
know
it, that's what they say, and they said it's because of yeah, it's a technical thing. It's literally they froze some ice and got some frozen ice from a river and like made some flavoring technical ice cream. So, anyways, all right, 13. What is the world's largest desert? And I bet you get
The
this one
Gobi
wrong.
Desert.
You know what? Scientists the past few years
The
have
Sahara
announced
Desert.
it's the Antarctic desert.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
But I know it's like the technical. All right, very last one. What was the first animal to orbit Earth? Was it A, a monkey, B, a cat, C, a dog, or D, a turtle?
Ooh. Sputnik. Once the astronauts went up, I know it was a dog, right?
It was a dog. Yep, it was Leica, and she was aboard Sputnik 2.
Sputnik. Once the
Oh,
astronauts went up, children only wanted to play with space toys. That's from Toy Story 2.
Yeah. So, Chris, what fries your donuts?
Man, I went to the movies recently, and I know you're not a big movie guy, and I know when I say this, you're gonna 100% agree with me, but I'm getting really frustrated with movies nowadays. You know why?
Was that?
So, let me just talk about the movie experience first of all. Now, I'm a commercial guy. I like watching the previews to see what's coming up, but it's getting out of hand. It's getting ridiculous. You're sitting here going like, we're 15, 20 minutes in and we still haven't gotten to the movie yet. And you're like, okay, that was the last preview. Okay, that was the last preview. And then you're like, oh my. And then you got the Coca-Cola previews. And then you got the Hyundai previews. And you're just like, dude, when are we going to get to the movie?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And it's always after the start point, too. And then there'll even be some, I don't know if they still do this, but sometimes what would aggravate me in some theaters, they would dim the lighting like, okay, it's about to start. It's about to start. And then it's like, nope, a few more previews. It's a few
Yeah,
more
you're like,
previews.
okay, the previews are done, and then it's like, nope, here's four more previews, and you're
It's like,
just like, okay, I get that you're trying to, and most of the time, like, not the actual movie previews, like the movie previews are fine, but then it's like the Coca-Cola and the Sprite previews that they aired before you got to the movie, so you're like, I've
yeah,
already seen these.
seen
Like,
these already. Yeah. I don't know. Now, do they still have some of the same, like, depending on the branding of like the movie theater, sometimes they'll have like the same movie intros from like the 90s of like the like like the railway on the cinema track where there's like the popcorn popping and stuff
yeah,
like
they
that.
still do that in most theaters, but here's the thing, at Premiere where I
Yeah.
live, they still show the same like commercial from 10 years ago for their I'm just like, bro, y'all need to update this because this looks
Yeah.
outdated. Like, dang.
I'm telling you. Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like there's some that'll still do that. And I don't know. This is kind of a side note, but and not what fries my donuts, but have you ever been in a movie where like the projector broke down like mid movie?
Yes. It's
Yeah,
annoying.
yeah, that was crazy. I've had that happen too. That really gets me too.
So
But
now
anyways,
let me get to the actual movies, processes, things, and you're gonna agree with me. I know you are on
oh
a lot
yeah,
of
I'm sure.
why can we not have a movie where a villain is just pure evil? That's what I want to know. It's always this backstory of like, oh yeah, they were good, and like you feel sorry for them, but then you're like, oh yeah, you're kind of rooting for them to like win at the end, and you're
Or
like, but it's not like
change their
original
ways. Yeah,
stories, but it's classics. Like for example, I'll give you a prime example. Like they're making a prequel to The Lion King called
yeah,
Mufasa, right? You
Mufasa.
seen
Yeah,
that? And
yeah. I've
in
seen the
this, it's
commercial
like,
for it.
oh yeah, Scar's nice and like he's a great brother and like everything, and he's cute and everything. And like, I'm understanding, like,
Things just
okay,
changed.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, can we not just have a villain who's just evil for the sake of being? Because there is pure evil out there. I know
Oh yeah,
that
for
like
sure.
good and bad with most humans is like a lot of times it is gray areas, right? So sometimes crappy people like kind of have that tragic backstory. But like people that are pure evil, they are pure evil from like the jump. And I wish we would just be honest about that.
Yeah, some people are born into this world as, narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths. Like, I mean, these are legit disorders that some people, and I'm not just talking about disorders, but they're just some people who are just born into this world who, like, you could look them dead in the eye and you could be like, listen, they were born cold. Like, it was just
Well,
like,
well, like even with the movie, like the Joker movies with Joaquin Phoenix, like he's pure evil, but that's like something to be celebrated, I guess. And it's like I'm kind of like, this guy's pure evil, and we're kind of celebrating it. And then there's the people who are like, yeah, like I'm all for it, and I'm kind of like,
I think that's just the farcical, Hollywood narrative is always, there's a good piece to everybody. And I think, I mean, in a lot in this world, I think that's where, and it weirdly loops into some of the other things that we've talked about of getting taken advantage of by people who may necessarily be, like you were saying, pure evil, but with that disguise themselves with good intentions, and then before you know it, it's like just like in the movies or just like in TV, which I know I was really highly influenced in. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's got to be like a semblance of good, and like you try to see the good in them, and like I don't know, I feel what you're saying though on that front.
and then this is my last point, and I'll keep this short, but like, and we talked about this. They're making How to Train Your Dragon, but a
A
live
live
action
action,
version. And
yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
sitting here
saw
like,
that.
this movie is maybe 10 years old, maybe 12 years old. And I'm like, dude, like,
Well,
we just had
let
this
me
movie.
ask you this too, man, and maybe you're more into that room than I am, but was it really that popular of a movie? Like, I don't feel like it was
Yes,
as
it
popular
was
of a
kind of
movie
like,
to get like a live action 10 years later.
it is, so it's kind of like DreamWorks is like, not staple, but it's kind of a marker. So, you know, how you had like Shrek in the early
Right,
2000s, right? How
yeah,
to Train Your Dragon is definitely like the Shrek for that generation. Like
yeah.
it's a cutting edge movie, and the movies are great. But like when I watched it, like the guy that plays, or not the guy, the dragon, the CGI dragon, Toothless, it looks exactly same as the animated. Like it looks dead exact same, and I'm just kind of like, why are we doing a live action version with this? Like. It doesn't make sense, or it's like, oh yeah, now we're revamping this movie, and it's like this movie's only 20 years old. Like they're doing a whole series on HBO Max, and it's just basically Harry Potter all over again. And I'm like, leave the movies alone. Like the movies were good by themselves. We don't need to add anything to it. We don't need to re-update this. Like, can we just like think about the Wizard of Oz? We have not remade the Wizard of Oz. Have like no one has remade. I mean, there's been like different versions of it, like the
There's been like
Wiz.
or Wiz or Oz. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen, like, there's been a few different ones that have been a little bit different, but yeah, you're right. They haven't remade that sort of things. And there are a few, like, they haven't remade like The Sound of Music and stuff like that, right?
They did remake it.
Did they really?
Yes,
Jeez.
they did. They
See,
remade it a couple years ago with not like a major live action movie. It wasn't like one of the big ones that came out in theaters, but they did like another movie version with Carrie Underwood, I think.
but pretty much, man, it's we're out of ideas, I guess, in Hollywood, because it's like we just keep pumping out the same stuff over and over again. And partially, you know what fries my donuts about the whole situation? And I'm going to call some folks out in America right now. The thing is, if we stop going to the movies and they stop making the money, they'll start making some stuff that's different. It's like literally, we don't have to go to the millionth sequel of it. We know it's going to be bad. Just boycott it and they'll start making other stuff.
Well, even like the ones that are original ideas, it's like, okay, I this idea would be a cool idea, but like the execution of this makes it look like a really bad B-rated movie. So you're kind of like, okay, like I don't know what it was. I can't remember what the name of it was, but essentially it was in like this post-apocalyptic world where Texas and California like seceded from the United States and they're their own nation now. I think it was
Okay.
called Civil War or something. And I was like, that idea is cool, but like the execution of it was like really bad. Like really,
Okay.
really bad.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some stuff like that. And I think a lot of it is because of who the budget is controlled by and things like that. I mean, I think that's a whole different subject. But no, I agree with you. I think a lot of it, and most of the time, going back to the commercials, when you're at the movies and you're watching through a lot of these commercials, a lot of the time it's like, nope, nope. Are you serious?
Yep.
Seriously? It's just like, oh, they're doing that again. And it's just like not interested, or I don't know. Most of the time it's just like, oh,
You'll watch
okay.
it and you'll be like, I'm like, oh, that's gonna be a flop. Oh, that's gonna be a flop. And then you're like, there's some that are like, oh yeah, like that'll be cool. And then you're like, oh, like they're making the Minecraft movie.
Oh yeah.
And
With Jack
Jason
Black.
Momoa is gonna be in it, and Jack Black, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's interesting, but and then you're like, oh yeah, here's another Fast and Furious movie. Oh my God, like
Yeah, the 80th one at this point. But yeah, no, I completely understand. It fries my donuts too. There's a reason. So Christopher goes to the movies quite a bit. I don't really too much. I'm not saying it's because of the commercials or whatnot, but it's more like I'd rather just do it from the comfort of my own home when it comes out. And I'm just one of those kind of guys.
I will say, like, this holiday season, they have unleashed a lot of good movies like Gladiator 2, Wicked, like Moana 2. I was like, oh yeah, like these are solid movies. Like they were pretty good. But yeah, like everything else, you're just like, dude, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, that's all I got to say. How about yourself?
That's all I gotta say about the
All right.
movies.
All right, man. I think I'm just really excited for our next segment, which is our improv segment. It's our mystery donut, and man, it's my favorite game that we do. Improv game. It is called Fortunately, Unfortunately, and we don't just play this on the podcast. Like
We
it's
played
just
in real life.
in real life. In real life. Just the other day, was that yesterday? My time's all messed up. Yesterday we were talking, and like I don't know. I think he was like you kind of in a grumpy mood. So next thing you know, we play Unfortunately, Unfortunately. So, anyways, without further ado, let's play Fortunately, Unfortunately. What category are you thinking, or what?
I have a great one.
What's going on?
Since and I don't know if you want me to shout this out, but my man Micah used to not like Christmas, and recently
Oh
he has
man.
gotten into the Christmas spirit.
Oh
And
man.
what about Christmas shopping?
Christmas
Fortunately,
shopping.
unfortunately.
Oh man. Okay.
Do you want to
that's
do
fine.
unfortunately since you're such a Grinch? Well, you used to be a Grinch. You're not a Grinch anymore.
You know what? Let's stretch it. Let's help me out. I'm gonna
You do the
get into the
fortunately.
Christmas. I'll be fortunately. I'll do my best here. I'll do my best.
All right.
All right. Fortunately, there's a lot of sales this year.
Unfortunately, you can't find a parking spot because people don't know how to park.
Fortunately, I didn't take a car. I rode a bike.
Unfortunately, there's still a crap ton of people in this store and they don't know how to walk because they're all thinking about what they have to get for Christmas.
Fortunately, I'm so full of the Christmas spirit from decorating to where nothing can get me down. I'm always going to be happy.
Unfortunately, your Christmas spirit is going to go away because that lady just stepped on your brand new Air Force Ones and now you got creases in them.
You can't crease my Air Force One. Dang, man. How are you going to do that to me? All right. Fortunately, no, I'm not a sneakerhead. But fortunately, that doesn't matter because I'm not a sneakerhead. There you go.
Unfortunately, because you're not a sneakerhead, you don't know what sneakers to buy as a gift for your wife.
I'm sorry, run that one by me again.
Is that unfortunately because you're not a sneakerhead, you don't know what sneakers to buy as a gift for your wife.
Oh, fortunately, my wife is not a sneakerhead either, so it doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, she really wanted a brand new pair of sneakers this year.
Fortunately, I've got Google on my phone, so we're going to figure it out.
Unfortunately, your battery's on 1%, so it died before you got the answer.
Fortunately, just like everybody in the Western world, I have what's called a phone charger and a wall plug-in, so it'll charge up for me.
Unfortunately, you didn't bring a car, and there's no wall chargers in the Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble, are they even still in business?
Yes! Everybody knows Barnes & Noble is still in business.
Which one went out of business? I don't. Anyways, I'm good on that one. I ain't got another one to come back to because apparently I can't charge my phone and buy my wife sneakers that I didn't know she wanted. And she ain't never wanted no sneakers.
She wants some Hades.
All right. All right. So since we're talking about the holiday spirit, this isn't the Christmas episode. We'll have one of those here in a few weeks. But let's do this at a holiday Christmas party. So maybe like a work Christmas party.
Fortunately, we're here at the Christmas party, and there is a lot of happiness and cheer.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of happiness and cheer because Glenda ate all the good ham.
Fortunately for us, there's still the macaroni and cheese that Charisse brought, so it's okay.
Unfortunately, Charisse got sick and sneezed all over her mac and cheese, so now nobody wants to eat it.
Fortunately, I just got my COVID-19 20th booster shot, so I'm okay.
Unfortunately, that booster was just all a hoax and did absolutely nothing for you. It was sugar water.
Fortunately, it was a placebo effect, so now my body healed itself.
Unfortunately, no it didn't. I don't know who told you that.
Fortunately, it's okay because I'm just happy that it's Christmas time.
Unfortunately, you got the news from your doctor. You only have 6 weeks to live.
Fortunately, it's okay because I'm just happy that I have lived a good life.
Unfortunately, no, you haven't. So it's not going to be a good funeral. Nobody showing up.
Fortunately, I have Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, so I will end up in eternity in heaven.
I really don't want to do this, unfortunately, that I just thought about, but I'm about to. Unfortunately, you forgot about a boatload of sins that you didn't ask for forgiveness for, and now you're going to hell.
Fortunately, the blood of Christ covers all my sins, so I'm still going to heaven.
I'm not saying nothing to that.
You want to get in a theological debate?
I'm not getting into anything.
Well,
No.
ladies and gentlemen, anyways, that was our improv segment, but it's time for us to wrap it up, and we're going to end with our last segment, which is our positive advice, or our eclair. And so, Micah, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, so pretty much, I was thinking about something this last week, and no, I don't know why I'm being all philosophical, but no, I was thinking about something this last week, and so I was living up in the Lubbock area, and if you know anything about the Lubbock area, it's really, really windy sometimes, and I remember I bought this kayak. Why did I buy a kayak in Lubbock? I really don't know. But there was very few water sources out there. So drove about an hour with this kayak with a friend, and he had a kayak too. So we get on the water for the first time and, really didn't know what we were doing. The biggest thing we didn't know what we were doing was going downwind and coming upwind are two different things.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was like, man, we're going really fast. We didn't think about it either. Right. And so we're going down the lake pretty much, like with the current and everything. Like we weren't even barely paddling. It's like, man, we're really flowing really fast and whatnot. Everything is really good. And then it's time to come back. And the moment we turned into it, I mean, all the way back, it was right directly into the wind, and like all the waves and everything were hitting. And the biggest thing that I remembered about this and what was so hard was I was already really, really tired because of, everything, all the work you have to do to get a kayak into the water and all this other stuff, as well as paddling. And now you're having to paddle just to stay in place. Like if you didn't paddle hard enough, you're going backwards. Like that's how hard it's like the wind is blowing. That's how hard the current is blowing. And, it had me thinking about life, and life is like that sometimes. It's really, really hard because you want to stop paddling, but a lot of times that's when you regress. And so there are some times in life where you got to push through. And so I'm just saying, I don't know who's out there, but sometimes, it seems like everything is coming at you and you're not going to make it back there. But it's like, not only are you going to find the strength to, paddle, not just to stay in place, but to keep moving forward. And eventually we did make it back to the dock, and it was, and don't get me wrong, it was one of those things. It took quite a bit of recovery. We sat in the truck and was like, oh my gosh, that was terrible for the longest time. I think I was sore for about 3 days, but at the same time, again, in life, it's a lot of the same thing. So just don't give up. And, a lot of times it feels easy to just be like, you know what, I'm going to lift the paddles up and let life take its course. And like, it's not going to work out well.
That's true, because you never know. Like, you almost might right be at the finish line, but it's like hard because you're like, I'm so tired of paddling. Like, everything's fighting me. And sometimes you're like, man, maybe this is just a sign to stop trying. And
Yeah,
that's really
right.
good. That's really good. Mine is ask questions. Questions are always a good like thing to help you get to know people better. So anytime you ask questions, like it helps you find the answers. And we live in a society where you don't have to really ask questions anymore because you just can ask Google one question and it has all the answers for you. But when you ask questions, it helps you learn more about yourself and more about other people. And it's okay to ask questions. Like, in order to get to know someone, I'm not the best, like, socially, and so I do struggle sometimes like with social anxiety and all that, but like I found in order to get to know people, like people love to talk about themselves. So if you can ask them questions about themselves and just ask them more questions and more follow-up questions, you more than likely can get to the root of the problem. And a lot of times when people are like struggling with things or whatever, if you continue to ask questions and they're like saying, "Hey, I'm just having a hard time," well, then ask a follow-up question. "Hey, what do you mean by that?" Like, "Well, I'm just struggling." Okay, like, what do you mean you're struggling? Like, what are you struggling with? And so if you can ask questions, it helps you get the answers. And a lot of times in leadership, people think that you have to have all the answers, but great leaders are the ones that ask questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions because it's a good thing.
And I'm even going to double down on that. Something that's been going on in my personal life is having to get to know people for the first time and make a lot of first impressions. Asking questions is fantastic. Also, to get to know somebody, kind of what Chris was saying, but at the same time, asking them, kind of even inferring things. They're wearing a particular shirt that says the Dallas Cowboys on there, and you can go, "Hey, you a Cowboys fan?" And you can make connections based on the questions that they have. And even if they say no, but my wife is, and I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or whatever, and it's like, and we butt heads, but they won this year, and she made me wear this shirt. From then on in, like, hey, so and so's got this thing with his wife and whatever, and so the next time they play, like, you could be like, "Oh, well, I see who won" or whatever, right? And those personal connection points really, really not just help you get to know people, but really establish really strong connections with people and that are very long term. It's interesting how little small things like that go a very long way.
Yeah, and when you remember those things, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe you remember that." And it's like, that cost me what? It's my time? That didn't cost me
two,
anything,
two
right?
seconds and a little minuscule of brain power, right? I mean, that's not too
Yep.
much, but anyways,
Tell them where to go find us.
yeah, man, over at the Trash Can Network, over at the Trash Can Network on YouTube, Facebook, and over at Trash Can Travel over on YouTube and on the Instagrams, and Trash Can Network, of course, on Instagram as well, too. But yeah, we get to see our wonderful faces and things like that. We kind of consolidated everything over into Trash Can Travel as far as the Aviator Society on Instagram, in case you missed that. So that's over on that page. But yeah, everything is rocking and rolling, man. I appreciate all of my app followers. Got y'all. I appreciate y'all, and we really appreciate all the
Nerds.
listens out there. I know, hey man, it is what it is. But we appreciate all the listens out there, and now all the views out there. Last week's did fairly well for our first time being on camera as well. Because we did move over to that new Facebook page. We kind of did some consolidating and moved over to a brand new, or not Facebook page, brand new YouTube page. So moving over to that new YouTube page was interesting how that was all going. But you guys still found us and still came out in some decent numbers. So I appreciate y'all on that one. We appreciate y'all. What you got to say, Chris?
Yeah, go watch us on the Donut Box podcast on YouTube if you have not done it yet. So, this one or next one, go watch us, okay? Now, it's time for the Starship to take us on home. I'm Chris.
And I'm Micah.
And this has been the Donut Box Podcast.
See you later.